Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Reasons and Resources. So we're now up to IO in this long-running series, which I know is starting to prove popular now. I've had a lot of comments with people encouraging me to carry on, and I will be carrying on. If you're curious where this is ending up, I'm basing the order of these on the order in which they appear in this table on my Polyglot Programming website. So we're now up to here. This is where we are now. We're going to carry on through. I'll probably keep adding programs to this. So the way it is at the moment, this series, the very least, won't finish until somewhere in 2026. So it's going to be quite long running. And like I said, I'll probably be adding to this at the end. So first up, reasons for learning IO, and I normally start off with these with my own reasons for learning it. And my own reason is because I started a project of working my way through 7 languages in 7 weeks. Now that project is still ongoing because the videos that I was producing as a side effect of that process, the Learn to Code, Code to Learn series, has sort of stopped I think after about the 3rd or 4th episode, because I got a bit bogged down in learning Erlang. So yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about the video resources in a moment when we get to those. So yeah, I've got some resources of my own about IO, a couple of videos, and I'll talk about one other video where a website went through, I think, in a similar manner to that I did, but slightly different side effect, if you like. So by going through the book, 7 languages in 7 weeks, and working their way through it, but they had a slightly different approach than I did in my series. So that was probably the main reason for me learning it, was just because I wanted to, 1, go through the book, but 2, do this series or a series as a side effect of going through the book. Now, other reasons which are sort of interconnected with that, which might result in you wanting to pick up the language. So firstly, it is an object-oriented programming language. It is a pure one, which is inspired by Smalltalk, Self, Lua, Lisp, Act1, NewtonScript, but it's a prototype-based object model. So because of that, you won't see the sort of things you'll necessarily see in class-based object-oriented programming languages. So it forces you to think about object-oriented programming from a slightly different angle. In prototyping, you're sort of creating these objects directly and then you clone and modify them, as opposed to sort of necessarily defining classes. So by learning a language like learning IO, it gives you that slightly different angle on object-oriented programming through the lens of a prototype-based approach. You've also got things like data trees in it, and you can... It's interesting if you do ever get around to working through 7 languages in 7 weeks, in that the route it takes you makes a lot of sense, because you'll see elements of a language, you'll see elements of the language that are helped by what you've learned in a previous chapter, either as a compare and contrast or as an extension of what you've learned. So that's really useful. It's very simple, it's nice and elegant. You've got this clean, minimal syntax, which we'll see in a moment once we get through to some of the resources on the website. So therefore, it makes it easy to pick up the basics, but there's a lot of very clever things in the language, which I've found took me a little bit longer to sort of grasp as well. But the language itself, like I said, very clean, very minimal. You've got this meta-programming and reflection in there as well, sort of introspection. So you can inspect, modify objects and the language itself. And so you end up with this sort of highly adaptable, dynamic code. and that enables you to customize the language to fit specific needs in very flexible ways. As a consequence, there's embeddability and scripting things in there. I was trying to look for the right word for that, really. Which, you know, again, if you're interested in pursuing that particular branch of programming, it can be really useful, particularly when you've got like a nice small executable for the language as well. And if you sort of take all of those and wrap them up, you get this really nice, fun excuse to do a paradigm shift, I found. So that I really enjoyed the period of time I spent learning the rudiments of the language. But also it set me up nicely because I've started to get interested in this concept of tiny experiments. And as you'll see in a moment, I think that the language lends itself well to tiny experiments. So I'll include links to the Wikipedia articles, so you can see the article's fairly short, but it gives you a really nice quick look at the language. And the other thing I found is, and we'll look at this in a moment very briefly, it's interesting when you go into I/O and look at the way like a line is processed and how that happens in conjunction with the way slots work in the language. Because this is a video just about reasons and resources, I'm not going to go into any great detail, but if you want to know a little bit more, then look at the resources I'm going to show you. You can watch my video, which was part of the Learn to Code, Code to Learn series. Now, because it's it's not one of these really sort of well-known languages, despite, I found it really interesting to learn. You're not going to find it on, these, like the Stack Overflow summary. I mean, I always include these every week because it's an interesting talking point, but yeah, it's not, I haven't found it on the list anyway. I don't know if it's going to be, who knows, it could be on this year's survey, but the 2024 survey, no, it's not on there. I'm just trying to look, is some of the languages it's based on, are they on there? I don't know if they are. I think I've seen Self in the list 1 year at least, but I don't know if it's still in here. Anyway, but one thing that is super useful is the site that supports the language. Very nicely laid out. So you've got sections about the language. There is a guide on here if you want to dig into the language, but I actually found a good starting point is to actually work through the tutorial. It's nice and simple, and it works real nice with the REPL. I mean, the other code works real nice with the REPL, but it's nice, particularly if you've got like a two-screen setup. You can, sit in the tutorial and then type into the REPL. And this is also a multi-line REPL as well, so you can play around with that. And you've got eval here, so you can put in your segments of code. The examples here. Let me let's just do that. You can see what to expect. Paste that in. Eval. There we go. You can see it's got things like println in it. But again, it's interesting, you know, I'm trying to think of the right word here, but you know, like the execution order on the line is pretty interesting. Did I forget something here? Anyway, this is not a oh, that's because, yep. That's why I didn't do the whole thing yet. So obviously be careful that you, when you're working through the REPL, to include the preceding code where it's required, because I just forgot to do that. So that's why that failed. Yep, so you can have fun playing around here, working your way through. Also, there's a section where there's, you know, a number of binaries. I did a video actually about installing this, because if you try and download the Windows one, I don't know what it's like with the other ones, but it looks like nothing's happening. That's because, and here I'm using Chrome as my browser, but Chrome is stepping in and silently blocking it. And the clue you get that's going on is if you copy the link address and then actually paste that in and try and access it, you'll see you get a insecure download blocking. But I cover that in the installation video that I've done probably a couple of years now ago now, actually, or maybe at least a year. So yeah, 7 languages in 7 weeks was my step on point. However, this book is pretty old now, but I didn't find that a problem with IO actually. It was a bigger problem with Scala, and one of the reasons I stopped sort of going through this book was Scala into Erlang. I was having problems like working out the best way of representing this for the series without inadvertently talking about deprecated stuff or stuff that wasn't relevant anymore. So there would need to be an extra level of processing going on in an extra level of work, I suppose, in any content that I was producing, that makes sure I wasn't bringing any obsolete concepts into the video series. So yeah, that's why the video series for Learn to Code, Code to Learn was put on hold for a while, was till I got my head round Erlang a little bit better. I'm not going to go through a ton of resources here like I usually do. One of the nice things with this, and there's other websites I've spoken about before, there's some pretty useful links, and one thing you can do is just work your way through and explore these as a really good starting point. So I would work out from the main website, go out from there as the best way to, as the best resources. However, there's a few others here, some of which are on my own, shameless plug. This is the Code Report. They did a series several years ago. I don't know if they went all the way through. I haven't looked at all of them, but I was aware that there was one for IO. I did a video a year ago on how do I install the IO programming language, and it goes through step by step how to configure, in this case, Windows. So you can set up, test that it's working, integrate it into Visual Studio Code, download the plugin for code highlighting. Also did this episode, and this was the one where very kindly the creator of the language made a donation to the channel, completely unsolicited, so that was nice. Thank you very much, Steve. Much appreciated, and it made my day, week, month, year in doing that. So thank you once again. And then finally, it does feature in the Programming Polyglot website you can see, but basically on this website that I put together, anything underlined means there's a page for it now. At this point, when I did IO, I got a bit bogged down because I really needed to understand the ins and outs of some of this stuff, like processes and threads, messaging, synchronization, pointers and garbage collection, and metaprogramming. And I didn't feel that what I'd learnt up to the point at which I was doing this, that I had enough understanding to correctly quality control any further information I was getting out of, say, large language models. So for this page, it's only 2/3 complete, and when I get round to understanding messaging in the language a little bit more, and when I talk about that, I'm talking about the real sort of fundamentals, enough to be able to critique or quality control any code that I'm going to be creating, and making sure I'm actually saying the right things. So that's to do and to follow. So there we have it. Hopefully you found that useful. I don't know if I said this at the start, I've received a lot of encouragement on the website from friends of the channel asking me to sort of carry on with this series, because I think there's several people learning various languages, and they're finding it useful in helping them sort of explore the fundamental resources out there for learning the languages. So thanks once again for watching. Bye for now, and I'll catch you in a future video.